Burnley.
Present.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Here.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With 10 councillors present and 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Councillor Klingon is joining us remotely tonight, and it's possible that there are some connection issues, but just as a heads up to everyone, that means that we'll be laying everything on the table for a final roll call, and there will be a couple roll calls because we have remote participation. Pursuant to rule number 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We will begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and I'd like to ask if any councillors wish to remember members of our community. Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes, I would like to recognize the passing of Ward 5 resident Kathleen Sullivan of Somerville. She's the beloved wife of John L. Sullivan, devoted mother of Janelle Pantanella and her husband David of Stoneham, and late Jacqueline Elizabeth, daughter of late Sylvia and Mary Gracia, loving grandmother of Alexis, Harper, Chelsea, sister of Michael Gracia and his wife Tricia, and late Robert Gracia and his wife Karen, the late Mary Magliozzi and husband Paul, cherished daughter-in-law of Patricia Sullivan, sister-in-law to Colleen Madden and her husband Sean, Michael Sullivan, Deco Sullivan and his wife Tammy, godmother of Savannah Brosnett. Kathy loved all the children she encountered as an ESP in Somerville and her colleagues. Kathy is also survived by several nieces, nephews, cousins, and extended family members.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. President, I want to thank our colleague from Ward 5 for that tribute. Kathy was my daughter's kindergarten para at the Healy School, where she was working up until her recent death. Our paras play such an important role in our schools here, and I saw firsthand just how important they can be. Kathy helped my daughter through a tough transition from outdoor preschool to indoor kindergarten classroom, and I always appreciated that. We have a pillow in our house that Kathy gave my daughter for their six-year-old birthday party, and yeah, I know it was a real shock for the school, the entire Healy community. Definitely was for our family, and I just want to extend my condolences to Kathy's friends and family. She is already missed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to sign on for Mrs. Sullivan, as I'd call her, because I grew up with her daughter Janelle and Janelle's husband Dave. I also knew her husband John L. Sullivan. All of them are public servants, people who work in the city and around the city, and have always been dedicated to the city. So I was very sad to hear of their loss this weekend. My thoughts go out to the whole family.
Will everyone in the chambers please rise for a moment of silence? Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, colleagues, we are going to go through the citations and public hearings. There has been a request for 2 items to be taken out of order, which are items 4.3, which is a resolution about state legislation around pilot payment in lieu of taxes, and we have a speaker from the public, and then item 10.7, which is an order from Councillor McLaughlin. If there are other requests, please just let me know. And with that, let's move on to the citations.
Mr. President, if I may, item 1.3 is approval of the minutes.
Let's approve them.
Item 1.3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 12th, 2023.
Seeing no discussion, the item is laid on the table. Next item, please.
Item 2.1 is a citation by Councillor Ewan-Campen commending Clayence Marsh on the auspicious occasion of her 100th birthday.
This is a great joy. Miss Marsh could not be here tonight, so I'll be delivering this in person, but I just wanted to take this moment to read this citation for Miss Marsh. A resident of Somerville for 55 years, longtime employee of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, mother of 4 and grandmother of 2, as well as a lover of cooking, gardening, and Somerville politics, on the auspicious occasion of her 100th birthday. So on behalf of the City Council and the Mayor, it will be my honor to deliver this in person. Next item, please.
Item 2.2 is a citation by Councilor Ewan Campen commending Ed De Silva on the occasion of his retirement from the Information Technology Department after 33 years of distinguished service.
So I'm just going to give a brief introduction from here, and then I'm going to ask that this citation be passed to Mr. De Silva, who is here with us tonight. This is such a treat, and thank you for being here. It was brought to my attention that Ed De Silva was the second employee in IT for the City of Somerville, was here when computers came to the City of Somerville, and I was told a story today that I just confirmed is true, that when computers were rolled out to the city, an employee of a department that shall not be named called Mr. De Silva for IT help and said, my coffee cup holder, it keeps retracting into the machine. And it turns out that was the CD-ROM. So I've asked Mr. De Silva to say a few words, so if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, and just wait a moment while I bring you this.
Thank you for giving me this. Been here a long time, seen everything. And for current and past coworkers, we've seen a lot, and I hope the department continues to go on. And again, I thank you for honoring me with this plaque.
Don't be a stranger. We know you live just a few blocks, so we hope to see your face. Next item, please.
Item 3.1 is a grant of location from Verizon to install 92 feet of conduit in the intersection of Herbert Street and Chester Street from utility pole 8 to 240 Elm Street.
All right, I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the item?
Mr. President, I have James D. Iturrando.
Please go ahead.
Verizon New England. Verizon is petitioning to place approximately 111 feet of 4-inch conduit from existing pole 8 and to intercept existing Verizon conduit on Chester Street.
I'm sorry, would you mind just please starting from the beginning? We were having technical issues.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Again, my name is James De Toronto, representing Verizon New England. Verizon's petitioning to place approximately 111 feet of conduit, 4-inch conduit, from existing pole 8 at the corner of Herbert Street and Chester Street, and intercepting existing conduit on Chester Street. We're requesting to place the conduit because the existing duct is unusable, and this will be to bring new service to a customer at 250 Elm Street. Are there any questions?
Is there anyone else to speak on the item first?
I don't see anyone.
All right, seeing no one else, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Chair Burnley, our Chair of License and Permits, how would you like to proceed?
Let them through. I'd like to move to approve this.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, the petition is approved.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
The next item is item 3.2, a grant of location from Eversource to install 102 feet of conduit in Kent Street from utility pole 191/3 to a point of pickup at 22 Kent Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on the petition?
Don't see any hands. Maybe we want to announce to raise their hand.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak, please use the raise hand icon on your screen. Ms. Galloway.
Greetings, my name is Phyllis Galloway. I'm a right-of-way agent at Eversource. As stated, Eversource respectfully requests to install approximately 102 feet of conduit in Kent Street. This work is necessary to upgrade the electric system service at 222 Kent Street.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I'll declare the public hearing open. Councillor Scott.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Just a question for the Eversource rep here. As I look at this, pickup and the placement of poles, for the life of me, I'm kind of baffled as to why this run is 100 feet when there's electric manhole and a closer pole available to drop this line.
Ms. Galloway, is that something you can answer?
Sure, there's not an engineer here to represent that, answer that question. I can reach out to an engineer and ask why I stay in my lane. I'm the right-of-way agent. I have no idea why they didn't go through the manhole. There had to be a reason why.
Well, that's fine. I'll tell you what, why don't we just go ahead and hold this one? We can either send it to the committee and allow it to be discharged, but if you could have somebody from Eversource Engineering follow up with me, I'd be happy to go in depth and figure this out and make sure that we're as little disruptive as possible. Thank you.
Sure, and what's your name, please, Councilor?
Councilor J.T. Scott, Ward 2 City Councilor.
All right, Ms. Galloway, yes, if you could have someone from Eversource, please reach out to the ward councillor, and we will have this item referred to the Committee on License and Permits.
Thank you very much.
Next item, please.
Item 3.3 is a grant of location from Eversource to install 8 feet of conduit in Sawyer Ave from utility pole 307/4 to a point of pickup at 29 Sawyer Ave.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on the petition? Please use the raise hand function. Ms. Galloway.
Phyllis Galloway, right-of-way agent at Eversource. Eversource respectfully requests to install approximately 8 feet of conduit in Sawyer Avenue. This work is necessary to provide electric service to the new housing facility for Tufts University located at 29 Sawyer Avenue.
Seeing no one else, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Is there anyone on the council wishing to speak on this? Councillor Burnley, how would you like to proceed?
Unless there's, through the chair, unless there's objection from my colleague from Ward 7, then I'd like to motion to approve.
All right, the item is laid on the table for approval at the end of the meeting. All right, so now we move to 2 items that will be taking out of order. I'd like to move to suspend the rules to take up items 4.3 followed by 10.7.
Item 4.3 is a resolution by Councillor Klingon supporting payment in lieu of taxes legislation in Massachusetts, Bills HD 2091 and SD 761.
Is there anyone who would not like to sign on to this? All right, the entire council would like to sign on. Councillor Klingon.
Mr. President, can you hear me okay? Can anybody hear me?
It appears that Councillor Klingon is speaking, but we can't hear him in the chambers. Just a moment, Councillor. We'll try to get this sorted.
Yeah, it's recognizing when I'm talking. I can see on the screen it says I'm talking, but you guys can't hear me.
All right, we'll give this just one more moment, and then we can lay this on the table until we get the technical issues sorted. Councillor Klingon, if you could please just contact me whenever we think we have the issue sorted, and we will take this item. I know that there's a member of the public wishing to speak, so we do want to take this up early. For the time being, let's lay this on the table and move to item 10.7, please.
Item 10.7 is a resolution by Councillor McLaughlin commending staff and first responders on their efforts to help residents during the recent extreme cold spell.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do try to give credit where credit is due, be critical sometimes as well, but I do like to give credit to people, and I think if people didn't realize, it got really cold this weekend, historic colds actually, and we've been fighting, yourself and I, Mr. President, and other councilors as well, for a warming station, and the city put up an impromptu warming station this weekend. It wasn't perfect, but it's also, as I said said in committee, we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and we don't need a great master warming station, the greatest warming station in the world. We just need something to make sure people stay alive while we figure things out. And I feel like that's what happened this weekend. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to the city staff who made this warming center happen, the first responders who made sure homeless people were able to get access to this warming station across the city. And I'd like to thank one of our liaisons, Neha, for returning my call late Friday evening to make sure that residents in my community had the information to get across town to get to the West Somerville warming station. And then I'd like to also thank the first responders as well, who not only helped bring people to the warming center, but the firefighters. I was speaking to a firefighter who told me anecdotally that he thinks this was probably the worst natural disaster financially the city's ever seen because of all the burst pipes, which I'm sure everyone got calls about. Numerous burst pipes. I was at this Sunday at the Be Fit Challenge, which is a event at the Boston Garden that benefits family members of first responders and veterans, and I called some of my firefighter friends to see if they were at this event, and none of them were there because they were all working overtime trying to make sure that people, that these burst pipes were addressed. So, like I say, I just want to express my appreciation. You know, we do things right every now and then, and that should be acknowledged, so thank you. And I also have another order as well later on, just to maybe learn lessons from this experience and see how we can do it better in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. I saw that Councilor Strezzo wanted to sign on. I certainly do as well. Are there other members? The entire council would like to sign on. Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. Clerk, were we able to make any progress with Councilor Klingon?
Excellent question. Councilor Klingon logged out and back in again, so let's have him try again.
All right. Let's take up that item off the table, item 4.3. Councilor Klingon, try again.
Testing.
There you are. We hear you now. The floor is yours.
All that for just this quick little thing here. Thank you, Mr. President, through you. This is just a resubmittal of a resolution that I submitted previously. As you know, the clock ran out on the legislation, and it now has it's been resubmitted. So here to give a brief update and just describe that is Mary Ann Wallace. If colleagues don't mind, I would like to sponsor her to speak on this item.
Councilor Klingon would like to sponsor Mary Ann Wallace. Ms. Wallace, are you there? You can use the raise hand.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate Councilor Klingon bringing forth this resolution again, and for the City Council to again sign on to this resolution. The payment in lieu of taxes bill would provide a local option for communities to initiate a mandatory minimum of 25% of a tax value, and for nonprofits that are assessed at $15 million or more. Back in 2019, which is our last assessed value, that would bring in extra over $1 million of revenue just from Tufts University that the city of Somerville could use for multiple programs. I appreciate Representative Idaho Vince introducing it into the House, and Senator Gomez from Springfield. Both have been fierce advocates for this bill to pass, as well as many legislatures. Our bill last year went the furthest it's ever been, and we're hoping this year to be more successful and actually get it passed. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this? I just want to make a brief comment. This council passed in 2021 an ordinance setting up a task force, a 7-member task force to address pilot related issues, and to date no people have been appointed to that. So the council has to make appointments, and it is my understanding that we have. We are still waiting. I've reached out to the mayor's office several times on this, and so I just want to take this opportunity to encourage the administration to move forward appointments on this important task force as well, and Ms. Wallace, of course, has been deeply involved in this, as well as the the entire kind of community that has been deeply engaged on this for many years, and I think it is time for us to stand up that committee. So thank you, Councillor Klingon, Councillor and Ms. Wallace. And with that, I think we return to the regular order of business.
And that brings us to item 4.1, an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Commissioner of Public Works immediately remove or raise above human height the dangerously low-hanging wires in front of 102 Line Street and report to this City Council the owner of the pole.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can we take these items together?
Next item.
Item 4.2 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Commissioner of Public Works immediately remove the wires separated and tied to a fence on the property at Chapel Street and College Avenue and report to this City Council the owner of the pole.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. So, update, these have both been taken care of, but update from our last session when we were talking about this. So these are great examples and of just how obscene the wires are, just so dangerous in our community and just ridiculous. So I'm going to continue this on and bringing forth these orders in some of your wards, well, in each of your wards, to really get the point across. And I want to commend DPW for taking care of this, that they took care of this. But this isn't our responsibility as a city to be cleaning up after our utility companies that are leaving these wires just to hang sloppy in our community. So we have the capacity to bill the utility companies for this, and that is why the last lines, the owner of this pole, we need to know so we can get that information out so we can bill these companies and correct this really bad behavior. So it is continuing on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. Those items are approved. Yeah.
Item 4.4 is an order by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld that the Director of Mobility consider adding speed humps to Clarendon Avenue to slow down cut-through traffic from Holland Street to Massachusetts Avenue.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pretty straightforward. There's a street in Ward 7 that is a clear cut-through for folks driving down. I apologize. It's actually Broadway, not Holland. We can amend that. Toward Route 16, if they want to hop on Mass Ave, they go down Clarendon Ave, and it's one of those streets that about 3/4 of the way down becomes Cambridge. So it's one of those gray zones, I like to call in my ward, where people don't know who to call when there are challenges and issues. And one of the big challenges is the speed. Folks are going downhill, picking up speed pretty quickly, and there's a big park at the very end of the block that's technically in Cambridge, but a lot of our youth use it. So I'd love to see this go to traffic and parking for the discussion on whether we can add some speed humps or other traffic calming on that street.
Councilor Wilson would like to sign on. Madam Clerk, do we need a roll call if we amend that to say Broadway instead of Holland? Okay. As amended, the item is approved with a copy to traffic and parking.
Item 4.5 is an order by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld that the Director of Health and Human Services discuss with this council the ending of the federal COVID-19 public health emergency, its impact on residents, and the city's access to vaccines, testing, and other resources.
Councilor Burnley would like to sign on, and Wilson. Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Thank you. So most of you have seen the Biden administration is ending officially the COVID-19 public health emergency in May. That will impact in some way our ability as a city to access resources, certainly funding, cost of vaccines, testing, et cetera, will change and shift. There have been some updates, or newsworthy updates, in terms of what the Massachusetts legislature is going to do about this. So I'm sure we're in a little bit of a wait and hold pattern, but if this can be sent to public health and public safety, and in the next few months hear from the director of HHS about what our plan is in Somerville to ensure we don't relax any of our services and resources to our residents, I'd love to hear about that discussion.
The item is approved with a copy to Public Health and Public Safety.
Item 4.6 is an order by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld that the Director of Public Space and Urban Forestry, the Director of the Office of Sustainability and Environment, and the Director of Communications and Community Engagement discuss with this council opportunities to increase communication and education of residents on the impact of black swallowwort and how to effectively remove and dispose of it.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
A little variety of orders today, Mr. President. So this came from discussions I've had in the last year with Green and Open Somerville about the impact of black swallowwort on our community, and in particular, how we manage disposal of it, how we manage education for our residents. It's February, so we have a little bit of time and space to start planning for the onslaught that we'll get this summer. And so I wanted to get ahead of it and see if we could bring some folks together. These departments, I'd love to sponsor Green and Open Somerville, hopefully at Open Space, to join us to have this conversation and see if we could do better as a city on combating it. So yeah, if we could send this to Open Space, that would be great.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the good councilor from Ward 7 for bringing this up. As many of you recall, it's a bit of pet issue of mine over the years. I guess since it's February, you couldn't grab a whole plastic bag full of it like I was known to do back in the day. But absolutely, always a good time to reiterate this issue because, as the good councilor noted, it's just a scourge across the city, but I would suggest or request that Director Oliveira be invited because the administration did launch an effort to use information education as sort of the point, the lead strategy on eradication. We did also consider a motion to create an ordinance on this, and at the request of the folks in urban forestry, that was tabled with the intent of continuing to really focus on education. So any and all voices on this remain welcome and relevant and helpful, and particularly given the amount of turnover we have in the city, which is a blessing and a curse. Always good to let any new folks know about this issue, and if we can expand on the efforts that have been happening, then I think that would be a good thing as well. And to my request to the councilor from Ward 7, if the discussion, the agreement on the ordinance was that, as I said, we'll continue taking the education path. But if it's the view of the committee or the feeling of the committee that maybe that's not effective enough, then we absolutely could come back to the ordinance discussion, because that was another tool that would be in our toolbox, but we'd agreed to sort of set aside for the time being. So keep me posted on that. Happy to help.
Thank you. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Councilor Pineda-Newfeld on this item. Just because it's going to be in open space, I just want to know, in terms of outcome, are you looking for, like material resources from the administration, such as, like, we want flyering around the community to, like, really help people visualize and understand what this looks like? Are we asking for a page on, like, the city's website? I know that last year I put forward an item related to the implementation of 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline. And if you walk down the hall, we now have posters on it. So I'm just curious about what material outcomes you'd like to see at the end of this hearing.
Through you, Mr. President, can I say yes and to all of your great ideas? There are door hangers that were developed, and so I think there's some improvements we can make to them, and as well as translating them. There's also some questions that came up around disposal. So how do we ensure our disposal contractors know what's black swallowwort versus trash versus recycling, and so that we dispose of it correctly so it doesn't just continue to spread. So that was one of the challenges that I heard last year. So I think voicing some of the challenges we've seen over the years in combating it and seeing if we can come up with some creative solutions. So that's why I'm saying yes and to your comments, because I think that's all what you mentioned is all a part of the discussion I hope we can have.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. My take on this, my dream, I have quite a few, but this is also one of them, is I would love to see a connection with the school district and like a week of action / advocacy in the community, like neighborhood walks of the locals neighborhoods of the schools, looking for it, of course, with neighbor participation, getting school children involved and seeing how it affects the community and what happens when it doesn't, of course, connecting it to the butterflies. And that's been my dream for years, so even just a conversation on that would be so much fun to really get the kids involved.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. I'll add another channel of this discussion that has started a few years ago, is the idea of basically a summer jobs program for students for folks who want to get it removed and don't necessarily have the resources to make those available. Sounds like it'll be a great discussion in open space. Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes to all of this, definitely. I remember, I think it was last year, the year before, Green Open Somerville gave me a big, thick stack of those door hangers. I remember thinking, like, there's no way we're going to give all these out. And my wife, walking back and forth from her job in Kendall Square, came back, I think, the second day and said, can you get me more of those? Her feedback was that she thought that they could definitely be used in other languages, Spanish in particular, and I talked to Director Oliveira at the time. And as I recall, there was an interest that it could be a great way, in terms of our language justice work that we're looking to do. I'd love to see those in at least Spanish, if not also some of the other languages that are spoken commonly in our city. Thanks.
Councilor?
I would urge also in Portuguese. We do have a lot of Portuguese speakers are a huge gardener, so.
Excellent. The item is approved with a copy to open space. Next item.
Item 6A is a report of the Special Committee on Charter Review, meeting as a committee of the whole on February 8th, 2023.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was a committee of the whole, so everybody present is well aware of what happened, but for members of the public and for the record, it was an incredibly productive 3-hour meeting. We did go through 4 items, 4 of the remaining 5 items in the balance of power recommendations from the Charter Review Committee, including the ability for the City Council to hire advisory legal counsel. That was the first item discussed. The City Council was universally in agreement with the Charter Review Committee, and moving forward with that, there were concerns expressed by the administration, and we are sending this out to have a little bit more work to figure out the final details and implementation to ensure that this can be done and that it will be funded appropriately. There is also a great deal of conversation about our following item, which was about the ability for the City Council to hire staff subject to mayoral appropriation. Again, all of these discussions were incredibly rich and incredibly respectful of the format and the process and the work that was done by the Charter Review Committee in advance of it. To that end, I'd also like to thank Bev Schwartz, who was present and invaluable in providing context, and Mr. McGoldrick from the Collins Center, who continues in just a stellar role supporting the council and the community in this work. There was also a provision about the access to information, a new provision that basically provides an escalation between a council request for information that we do here all the time, or an informal request that a department head might come or city staff might come to one of our committee meetings. This would be an escalation between casual request and subpoena. So again, a lot of interesting discussion on that, and Councilor Burnley moved to approve, support the recommended language that had come from the Charter Review Committee that passed. And then finally, there was extensive discussion about the department head hiring process. Currently in the Charter, the City Council is granted unequivocal right to do a confirmation process on department heads that are specified within the Charter. And the Charter Review Committee felt it was important to specify that more due to the fact that that provision has been somewhat ignored by previous administrations. So there was a great deal of discussion around that. I would refer anybody interested to watch the details of that meeting. But once again, the conduct of all of my colleagues here was just stellar, and just a wonderful, rich discussion that I think will lead us to a solution. That one was also sent out for a little bit more work. And hopefully we'll be bringing that back in future meetings to have a discussion about it. We did have one more item left in balance of power, which is the appointment of multiple member bodies, which include entities like the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Commission for People with Disabilities, or the Women's Commission. I expect that to be a very vital, vibrant discussion at our next meeting. And depending on what kind of progress is made by different working groups who have gone off to refine language, it may be that we will revisit some of those topics that we are waiting for information back on, or it may be that we move forward onto some of the budgetary authority questions, which are in the next category. I hope to have that agenda posted a week from now with updates to counselors. Again, many thanks to Director Gill and Solicitor Amara, who came in to provide their expertise and their subject matter expertise on the individual topics when we had them, and of course for all the support staff, including Brendan Salisbury, for the City Council. So with that, I'd ask that the report be approved. Oh wait, before I get to that, there was one thing. At the close, when discussing department heads, Councilor Panetta Neufeld had indicated that she had some thoughts and was willing to hold those to an informal working group later. The diligent Mr. Salisbury and Clerk Wells indicated that they were concerned that might create a violation of open meeting law in terms of creating a quorum of a committee that they serve on. So I wanted to, before asking for it to be approved, or on the motion for approval, either way, invite Councilor Panetta Neufeld to share any thoughts that she had in this public forum, so that they are on the record and so that we all get to hear it.
Excellent. The committee report is submitted for approval and in discussion. Councilor Panetta Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Scott. These comments feel a little out of context, but I had lots of scribbly notes from yesterday's conversation that I wanted to share. I was reflecting on the concerns from Director Gill, in particular around the conditional offer and the 30-day period, holding time, I guess we'll call it, to ensure this council has some time for that appointment conversation. And, it struck me, in my day job, I work with clients on executive search, and many folks at this level want that time for transition. They want at least 2 weeks, if not 4, so they have some space to transition out of their current job. They have some time, perhaps, to take a little time off before they move on. And so, it struck me that wasn't a piece of this conversation, that we're forgetting folks at this level of experience. Department heads might appreciate and enjoy having 2 to 4 weeks to breathe in terms of their transition time. I think if it becomes a real sticking point, I think it was Councilor Klingen who said, perhaps we can amend that to think about 15 days, that kind of 2-week period most people use to after a resignation. I'm open to that. I think it ties our hands a little bit, in terms of turning around a CAPA meeting and getting that scheduled. But if that's a serious concern, I just wanted to share that I'd be open to that conversation. And I appreciated Councilor Gomez-Mokad, again, listening to the discussion last night, your point about this setting up a relationship between a department head and the council, that we hope and we need collaborative relationships with these department heads. And to be able to meet them allows us to get to know their background and experience in a real way before we get an email saying, hey, hi, I'm new here, right? Hopefully we'll get to know you a little bit better. And that's really been part of the purpose of these conversations. It's not just that we're grilling department heads, it's that we're getting to know them, they're getting to know us as well as counselors. The last point I'll make is as we go through this process, to remember we're not creating a process for the humans in this space or the humans in this administration. This charter should live on beyond us, beyond this administration. And so again, as we think about and have conversations about what has happened before, or the current mayor or the former mayor, this should work for mayors to come. And so I want us to remember, putting charter reform down and hopefully getting this passed should be a document that we feel good about for the years when we're not on this council. And so I was worried a little bit at the conversation that was heading in the direction of, well, our candidates for department heads are obviously qualified. Well, of course they are, right? And we hope that they will continue to be so, and we should set up methods for that check and balance in the future, just in case. So I just wanted to share my thoughts there, and looking forward to seeing what the working group comes back with as a result, but thank you for the time tonight.
I see a couple hands up. I'm going to make sure this does not become a large discussion, but Councillor Scott and then Councillor Wilson. No, let me be clear. That was very much in order as you were kind of sharing ideas for this working group to consider, right?
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it brief and just say that was stunning, and I'm so glad that you brought it. And for anybody who liked hearing your counselors really deliberate thoughtfully on the challenges facing this council and future administrations in the city, please watch all of the charter review meetings, because it is full of that kind of really quality thought and participation. So thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for that. I really appreciate Councilor Payne-Neufeld's comments there and just the entire discussion about it. I'll keep this extremely short, one sentence. I'm just struck tonight, we have 2 of our new clerks here working tonight. They will not be confirmed until later. So it struck me. I know we're talking about department heads, but we have clerks here working before the confirmation process happens. Thanks.
Duly noted. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the Vice President, you're more than welcome to have my spot on that committee, because I'm already exhausted from this particular conversation, and I will definitely bow to your expertise on this.
Excellent. The item has been put before us for approval. Seeing no further discussion.
Item 6B is a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on February 7th, 2023.
Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, your Finance Committee met Tuesday night for an hour and 36 minutes. We had all 5 committee members present, and we took up a 13-item agenda. I just want to run through quickly what we discussed and what we recommended for you all to approve here tonight. We recommended that you approve tonight roughly $91,000 state grant for the fire department for staffing costs, a roughly $6,000 item for IT prior year invoices, the creation of an opioid recovery and remediation stabilization fund to receive future funds from a state opioid settlement disbursement, and time-only contract extensions for Weston and Sansom for Conway Park, for CBA Landscape for Henry Hansen Memorial Park, for Barletta Heavy Division for Somerville Ave utilities and streetscape work, and Invoice Cloud for parking department credit card processing. We did keep a few things in committee this week in order to take them up again in the coming weeks, following the news that broke during our council's regular meeting 2 weeks ago that the MBT gave a spring ETA for the Community Path Extension, or CPX. We got a memo from Acting Special Counsel Salkert updating us on where the lease agreement between the city and the MBTA stands, as well as a timeline for finalizing the language and a general roadmap for opening the CPX. If you haven't had a chance to read that memo, I'd strongly encourage all of you to do so, especially since you're likely being bombarded with questions on email and through social media, like I am, from constituents about what's happening with the CPX. In any case, we expect to have that finalized lease agreement language for the February 21st Finance Committee meeting. While I've been looking to keep that agenda extremely light due to the important UCTIF presentation, discussion, and public hearing, I am going to include the CPX lease agreement on that agenda just to ensure that this hurdle is cleared as we look to get the CPX contracts opened. Then we had a discussion by the committee about the aforementioned 299 Broadway UCTIF. The materials that have since been distributed to this council weren't ready yet for this meeting, so it was mostly a discussion by committee members of questions and concerns that we have about the process and the parameters of this new tool at our disposal. We talked about the need for a covenant with the developer, as well as how we would monitor and ensure compliance with the terms of that covenant. There's a good summary of this in the clerk's minutes. This UCTIF item is going to be the main focus of that next Finance Committee meeting on the 21st, so please make sure you've read over the materials on this that were sent out by Legislative Liaison Carrijo last night, and that you are contacting the administration and staff with any questions or concerns you'd like to get answered in advance of that meeting. We then took up Councilor Klingen's order on cable franchise fees briefly, but at the request of a colleague, we're keeping that one in committee to take it up at a later date again. Councilor Kelly's order requesting an update on free cash certification and usage got a very welcome update with the news that our free cash has finally been certified by DOR. And even better, it's a pretty staggering number of $38.8 million. Directors Bean and Mastroboni are going to join us in committee on March 7th to give us a detailed update on both specific plans for how this particular pile of cash will be used between now and June 30th, as well as a forward-looking policy they're working on crafting about free cash usage in general. Needless to say, there was a lot of interest from the Finance Committee about this one. And finally, we discussed the mayor's memo on this council's shared FY23 budget priorities and how they were or were not addressed in the final FY23 budget, as well as the administration's request for our budget priorities for the FY24 budget, as well as information from the administration on their plans for the FY24 budget planning and community engagement processes. There were some questions about specifics, and we'll be circling back on this one on March 7th as well. So I ask that you accept this committee report as submitted. Thanks.
The committee report has been submitted. On that, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have too many questions, but I do have, I think, literally 2 questions. And I'll also just say, it sounds like a great meeting. I should go back to listen to it. You know, there are a number of those items that were put forward during our previous budget season that I was very invested in, as I know many of the councilors were. I would note that, for example, there was a recognition of the Brailler situation, trying to make sure that we have accessibility for folks who use Braille in this community. There was an item for us, our city, to buy one. We're talking about renting one. Seems a little bit like a half measure for during a pilot program. There was also an item for fare-free funding of transit. That item was not necessarily fare-free in practice. But as to what you guys discussed in this meeting, the Opioid Recovery and Remediation Stabilization Fund, I think is a super important resource for this community. So I'm just curious if you got a sense of how much money will be going into that fund, and also if that fund will be used to help us establish a safe consumption site.
Councilor Kelly on that.
Thank you, Mr. President. To that point, Director Carroll from Health and Human Services is coming before Public Health and Public Safety on Monday, which I actually think you are going to be swapping in for Councilor McLaughlin. So you'll be able to listen to that conversation and participate as well. But I don't know the exact dollar figure off the top of my head, but in the Marijuana Stabilization Fund, there is $500,000 that was earmarked for a brick and mortar or mobile site. So that is the money that will pay for the safe consumption site when that is ready to go. And the rest of the funds are going to be used for, they're in my notes at home, but 3 different reasons basically having to do with the opioid epidemic. Some of it is bolstering service providers who are already working in our community. Some of it is building new services, and then there's a third, but Director Carroll lists those out in a pretty detailed way in the actual meeting, and we can also talk again on Monday at the Public Health and Public Safety meeting when we talk all about the safe consumption site.
Councilor Burnley? Or Councilor Wilson, do you have further on that issue? Yeah, Councilor Wilson.
Yes, on that, Mr. President, I just wanted to answer your question. They've not determined the actual amount. They're trying to figure out the form. There's a whole formula. There were questions asked about that. But yeah, maybe that'll be covered more in Councilor Kelly's committee meeting to answer your question.
Councilor Burnley.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I think this is really great that we have this. I think it's, awful that we need to have it in the first place. Quite frankly, I'll just like to say on the record, there are some corporate executives in this country who should not be out on the streets for what they've done to members of our community. And the amount of money that we should be getting for this for generations of opioid peddling is, I think, unfathomable, and we will likely get far less than I would like. Having said that, I really hope that this does go to making sure that people can stay alive and if they so choose, get treatment, because any funding that we can do to keep people safe and healthy is the best way I think we could spend our money. So thank you.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. President, Councilor Burnley just reminded me of something last night. Tuesday night, I suggested that we name and shame the companies that did this and that are part of the settlement. And I'll tell you, that's Walmart, Teva, and Allergan. So shame on them.
Thank you, Councilor. This committee report contains an item that requires a roll call vote, so we'll do that now.
So first on the committee report of the Committee on Finance meeting on February 7th, 2023. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon. Councilor Klingon, please try it again.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that committee report is approved. And that will put item 23-0125 before the committee, creating the Opioid Recovery and Remediation Stabilization Fund. On that item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Excellent.
And that will bring us to the next item, which is 6C, a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, meeting on February 2nd, 2023.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. So we met, the Housing and Community Development Committee met Thursday, February 2nd. All the members were present, and we started the meeting off like we usually do with a update on the evictions or housing instability, what's happening, what are the numbers. There has been a slight increase in evictions, Director Schachter reported, and in monthly applications for assistance alike. And we talked about the status of rental assistance programs like RAFT, and then there's a new application portal, and also it's a new legislative season, so there'll be some new bills in front of the State House as well. So that will be always an ongoing conversation, and we also talked about two items as a new year and a new fiscal year, or not new fiscal year, but a new year of, for instance, the increase of Social Security cost of living. Wanted to check in and see, would that, an unintended consequence of that, with income limits, accidentally displace anyone if anyone gets $100 more, and Director Schachter explained that with that 8.7% increase, it's still extremely unlikely in most cases that that people could lose their eligibility but it is on people's minds. And it's good to have the dialogue anyhow on it. We also talked about the increase in utility, heating, and water bills, and talked about how it could affect affordable housing tenants. As I'm sure you've all heard and experienced, there's been an increase in those bills, and had a good conversation, review the minutes on that. Right? And really quick, I want to talk about the last item on this agenda. We talked about the Mr. President, your order talking about the bicycle committee and Somerville Bike Kitchen, and how to develop a program to help Somerville youth repair bikes donated by the city of Somerville. We kept this item in committee, so in case I forget to mention that. But we talked about the fact that our vocation department in the high school sometimes repairs bikes because if there's not cars available to fix. I don't know if we, because I want to bookmark this, but I don't know if cars are able to access the auto department yet. Check mark on that. We'll go back to that. But with the bike repair, we talked about, now that the teen center is open, is there a possibility of some kind of collaboration? We're going to keep this in committee, but we also talked about are there locations? There's an interest, but would love to hear your thoughts on this, colleagues, and we'll hopefully be talking more about this next month. And with that, I would love to for this report to be submitted as or approved as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo, and thank you in particular for the summary of the discussion on the bike kitchen. I appreciate that update. Is there further discussion on the committee report? That is laid on the table for approval.
Item 6D is a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting in joint session with the Planning Board on February 2nd, 2023.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Land Use met last week to discuss 4 public hearings. No votes were taken. It was the night to listen to the community. The first public hearing was a item requesting the ordainment of requesting of an amendment to section 6.1 of the commercial district fabrications of the Somerville zoning ordinance to permit additional uses for ground story commercial space fronting a pedestrian street. Dan Bartman, our city staff, explained the amendment, saying that it's being proposed to allow changes that are permitted in other areas and to correct an unintended consequence that resulted from the planning and zoning overhaul. 4 properties, 55 Bow Street, 2 Bradley Street, 343 Medford Street, 600 Mystic Valley Parkway, are affected by this amendment, which provides equal rights while fronting a pedestrian street. Attorney Shapiro told us, the members, that the city is being sued in land court on a spot zone challenge, and that the case is set to be heard in mid-March, so it's a pressing item. In the meantime, the judge has asked for parties to work together, which is what we're trying to do. This item was kept in committee, and we'll be discussing it next week on the 16th, and myself and the planning board, this was a joint meeting of the planning board, will keep public hearing open until tomorrow, the 10th. We had another public communication, independent request from a Mr. Dave Enos, requesting the adoption of amendment to the zoning ordinance map to change zoning district 14 on White Street Place from neighborhood residence to MR4. Garrett Enos represented the applicant, told members that the property was purchased in September and the clients want to match the zoning on lot 59 to merge the two to allow for trans-oriented development, thereby enhancing the neighborhood. This came under a mixed review from the public, and I recommended that the applicant work with the ward councilor and city and residents to see if they can reach some sort of agreement. That item was kept in committee. The planning board proposed an amendment to the zoning ordinance section 15.1.3 about neighborhood meetings. This amendment would basically allow the president of the council to identify a at-large councilor to represent a ward in community meetings if the ward council is unable or unwilling to facilitate a community meeting. The chair of the planning board, Capuano, expressed support, and there were questions about why would it be an at-large councilor instead of any councilor, and the logic from the planning board was that the at-large councilor at least was voted for by the ward itself, so they'd be having an elected official who's accountable towards the ward residents residents to make sure that they were represented. This item was also kept in committee. And then finally, we had a mayor's request requesting ordainment of section 10.8, commercial signs of the zoning ordinance to permit commercial signs by right. No one came and testified to this, and Dan Bartman explained that applications for signs come into the planning department when approved. They go to ISD for another approval, and it could take up to 2 months to approve a sign. They think it's a burdensome load that we don't need to do. So that is my report. All items were kept in committee, and I request that this committee report be accepted as submitted.
Excellent. Is there discussion on that? At larges, are you ready to facilitate some neighborhood meetings? We'll see. All right, that item is laid on the table for approval.
The next item is item 6E, a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on January 31st, 2023.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Legislative Matters did meet last Tuesday, and there are a few items that we will, actually I will ask to take up an item out of order after this meeting because it is a separate submission for one of the items that we discussed that we didn't actually have before us in the committee. It was a conceptual item. But a couple of points, the minutes are thorough as always, and so I would refer anyone to those for details of items I don't discuss here. I want to note that the surveillance technology, the annual report from for items that relate to the school district, the school department requested that if there are any questions on that report, that they be submitted in writing. There wasn't anybody from the school department available to attend the meeting, and so it's unclear if they still intend to provide someone to come to the future meeting. I will continue to have that conversation with the liaison's office, but you know, from my perspective as one council, happy to try, and I know they've got a lot going on, as do all members of the department of the administration. But if they, you know, if we can get if any folks have questions in particular, send them along in writing. I'll make sure they get to the folks, and then you know, we can help them make most efficient use of their time. So that's a request on that, and that goes, as always, goes for members of the public as well. If anyone has questions on the in report from the school committee, the school department items. We discussed a proposed amendment to the surveillance technology ordinance. I mentioned this, I talked about this in a good bit of detail last week, so I won't go into too much detail here, but this is essentially to make clear that the exemption for parking ticket devices that is currently in the surveillance technology ordinance doesn't apply to the type of automated camera-based parking enforcement technology that the administration is looking to use. So fairly simple amendment that you have before you. That's the separate item that I'll ask to take up after this committee report. That, as I said, is a separate submission. The other item that we have before us is a home rule petition to extend for another year the approval for Acting Chief Femino to continue serving. The state law has age limitations, and so we have to just ask for permission to continue. We did have a brief discussion on the process. Either coincidentally or not, we had all received, the council had received a communication from Director Melina Capers from the Department of Racial and Social Justice that week, summarizing the police chief search process. And I think there was an email that went out just today or the day before, or yesterday, naming the consultant who'll be advised. So while it has been a few years here, we're taking a different approach than the RFP approach that didn't yield any results, any substantive success. And so that's why we need to continue to have Acting Chief Femino in the role, and so that's what this HRP is that's before us. I think that's all I wanted to highlight. Yeah. So with that, Mr. President, I ask that the report be accepted as submitted. And then I will ask to take up the item, which I'm sure the clerk will remind me of the number of, because I forgot to look for it ahead of time. Thank you.
8.1.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. The committee report is submitted and laid on the table for approval? No.
We'll vote it in order to get the other one before us.
Excellent. We will vote to get
the home rule petition.
The home rule petition before the committee. Thank you. On
the report of the Committee on Legislative Matters meeting on January 31st, 2023, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Yes. Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all counselors in favor, that committee report is accepted.
Excellent.
And that puts item 23-0074 before the council, a home rule petition authorizing the continued employment of acting Somerville Police Chief Charles J. Femino. On that item, Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Nay.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 counselors in favor and 1 opposed, that item is approved.
Excellent. Item 8.1.
That will bring us to the next item that we're going to take out of order. Item 8.1, an officer's communication from the city clerk, submitting an amendment to section 10-63 of the Code of Ordinances to clarify the surveillance technology ordinance regarding parking ticket devices.
Counselor Davis.
Thank you. As I just mentioned, this is a fairly simple amendment. It just adds language, which I thank our legislative policy analyst, Brendan Salisbury, for helping draft, that says, so the existing exemption to applicability of the surveillance technology ordinance reads parking ticket devices and related databases. Those are exempt. So the addition would be provided, however, that PTDs shall not include automated parking enforcement systems that utilize a camera and related databases, whether the system generates tickets or otherwise. So I will note that we also have on this evening's agenda the submission of the impact report for this technology, which I thank the administration for working on quickly, as we agreed a couple weeks back when this council agreed to take the action to enable that technology to move forward. So cooperation, working, and it would be my intent to put that item on the agenda for next Tuesday if it is referred to committee at this meeting. If not, then I won't. But with that, I think we because this is a new item, we haven't taken any action to approve, so we need to vote 3 times. So I move to recommend approval first, and then enrollment or ordainment.
We will approve, enroll, and ordain.
On approval of item 23-0199, an amendment to section 10-63 of the Code of Ordinances, Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 11 counselors in favor, that item is approved. On enrollment, Counselor McLaughlin. Yes. Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all 11 counselors in favor, that item is enrolled. On ordainment, Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all counselors in favor, that item is ordained. And that will bring us to the next item, which is, now I've lost my place, which is item 6F, a report of the Special Committee on Road and Issues, meeting on January 30th, 2023.
Counselor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a fantastic first meeting of this new committee. I want to thank Councilor Strezzo for her time on the committee and welcome Councilor Wilson to the committee. We got a presentation. Whoa, that was loud. We got a presentation from the Environmental Health Coordinator, Colin Ziegler, and the Director of Inspectional Services, Nick Antanavica, which outlined a whole bunch of stuff that's been going on, including but not limited to the fact that since 2019, there were 323 residential rodent treatment programs. That's buildings of 3 units or less getting treated for rats by the city. And by 2022, we are up to 799. So more than doubling our residential rodent treatment program, but there's a lot more that needs to happen this spring. So feel free to check out the presentation from the administration, which includes also a bunch of staffing needs. As counselors are developing your budget priorities, please look at what our staff are asking for, in particular in the rodent division of ISD. In addition, we took up quite a few items, marked quite a few items as we're complete, but are definitely interested in having more conversations, especially around the relief fund for rodent-related damage to cars and homes. The environmental health coordinator said there's nothing in the books that he knows of a program like this, but that there's not a disinterest for us to do it, but we would be leading the way if we were to put forward a fund of this nature. And quite frankly, I think $39 million in free cash, we can maybe slip a nice million into a fund for this. Similarly, we were updated on how contrapest, or rat birth control, as it's colloquially called, is not a popular solution. We've tested it in the past and it has not been successful, but instead moving forward with carbon monoxide pumps into the boroughs as a more successful way of targeted rodent treatment. The kind of most interesting item that left, I think, the committee a little bit confused was that there are currently no smart boxes in East Somerville. This has been an extremely successful program, and we're going into phase 2, and lots of the boxes are being moved to the Union Square neighborhood where they had not been before, particularly around Lincoln Park, which is a residential area, it's a school site, it's a green space, and so getting a kind of diverse landscape of how those smart boxes are going to interact is exciting, but there are 0 boxes in East Somerville right now. According to the environmental health coordinator, it only costs about $400 to install a single smart box. The entire rodent issue committee, I'm happy to hear from colleagues if they disagree, believe that there should be boxes in East Somerville. And I think there's actually an item on the agenda tonight about that. So with that, I would like the committee report accepted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. I see that Ms. Carrijo from the administration would like to speak. Please.
Thank you. Through the chair, Hannah Carrijo, Legislative Liaison. I just wanted to make a correction. I think there was a misunderstanding during this meeting. There are 20 smart boxes that are in East Somerville. So it's just that there were not additional smart boxes, I believe. And Councilor McLaughlin, I just forwarded you an email where there's a ton of information about this. I apologize for not getting you that sooner, but I just wanted to clarify that there are 20 smart boxes in East Somerville. Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that, well, I do have an item. Might as well discuss it while we're here. Let's see, item 10.2, if we could read that.
Item 10.2 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Inspectional Services provide smart boxes throughout East Somerville to address rodent issues.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you. So, I don't want. I hope what Ms. Carrillo said is accurate. But in the meeting, what was discussed was there's smart boxes in East Somerville, but they count Union Square as East Somerville. And I asked them directly, how many are in Ward 1, and they said 0. So is that incorrect?
Ms. Carrijo.
Through the chair, I think that is incorrect. I think that was a misunderstanding.
I mean, I was pretty direct with my question to the people who laid the traps.
Through the chair, I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't speak to the language or why this misunderstanding occurred, but there was follow-up because the mayor was also confused by this, and Colin did clear it up. So I do ask if you could check I have the email up, and it does have a lot of details about the specificity, but there are 20 that I believe are in in East Somerville. Split between Gilman and MacArthur Street.
That's still the other side of McGrath Highway.
Okay.
So that's not Ward 1. It's not East Somerville. So all right. I mean, it's just over the road, but it's like, anyways, I'll try to save my zeal for later, but we need more boxes. That'd be great. And the city's data repeatedly says that Ward 1 is the hardest hit area from rodents. So that's why it's so important to me. And I'll wait and see what this data says, because I was pretty direct, and it's in the record. We could go back, watch the video. I very blatantly asked how many are in Ward 1 specifically, and they said 0.
Councillor Kelly, then Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to wrap that up, that was what was said. It was said that East Somerville counts Union Square. If the administration could attach that list of where the smart boxes is as a communication to the next council meeting. I think all ward councilors would be curious in that. I don't think I received that information. And to that point, residents were asking the cost of smart boxes because they're thinking about purchasing them themselves. So when we talk about how this is an equity issue and this is a justice issue and how people are spending their money to address rats when the city could be doing it ourselves with the $39 million in free cash, that's what we're talking about. Residents should not be spending out-of-pocket cash to address a public health issue, period.
Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, are we taking up Councilor McLaughlin's order as well with this? I had comments on that, but I...
Yes, that item's before us.
Yeah, I said this during the meeting, and I'll repeat it here. During the last campaign, when we all heard a lot from people about rodents, personally, the number of those stories and complaints that came from East Somerville, from Ward 1 specifically, was off the charts. Their stories were the most harrowing by a long shot. So I would just love to see us really beef up the number of smart boxes throughout Ward 1, especially with that $38.8 million of free cash sitting there. Thanks.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
I know it's not my ward, but it's very dear to me, as Councillor McLaughlin knows, and as I hang out there with some members of the community, I want to emphasize that there are members in the community there who have less resources, who hang out in our parks, which one of them is being the Chucky Harris. I've gotten photographs of apparently the rats decide they're squirrels and hang out on the trees. So I do ask that if they're not there, please put them there, because there are kids who, they can't go to the Cape, and this is where they hang out. So please, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McLaughlin.
One final comment, just because I did just get the email from Ms. Carrillo about this. Just looking at the heat map, what it shows, MacArthur Street, yes, Ward 1, the street that has maybe a dozen residents who email me regularly about this. Most residents don't do that, so we have one spot with smart boxes. I'd like them throughout the ward.
Excellent. I would also appreciate if that communication could be shared with the next meeting. That'd be helpful for all of us, and we can refer it to the rodent committee. All right, with that, the order is approved with a copy to the rodent committee, and the committee report is laid on the table for approval. Next item, please.
And the next item is item 6G, a report of the Special Committee on School Building Facilities and Maintenance, meeting in joint session with the School Committee Building Maintenance Subcommittee on February 1st, 2023.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
I am just going to start by saying I think the notes don't cover everything that was discussed at that meeting. So if you're really interested in knowing, not because they're poor notes, but we get a little technical, go through a lot of information, and I'm going to ask you to please watch an exciting video from DPW that came through. So very quickly, we started with we always start with an update on the feasibility study for the HVAC systems. The Kennedy School has been wrapped up into this because of the failure of the chiller. Construction documents are coming out in March, and Kennedy will have a temp chiller again this year, and again the next cooling season 2024. We should hopefully have a new chiller pending supply chain issues, as we very well know. That's happening with our mechanical systems. Progress is going on the Healy and the West. Construction documents are projected to be ready to bid in the summer of 2023, and the projection is that repair changes will happen in the cooling and the heating seasons, so we have no disruptions to the schools. This is moving more like towards 2024. We then proceeded to discuss the school building feasibility study. That is not just the Brown and the Winter Hill. What we've been discussed is that as part of this, there have been walkthroughs through the schools to assess classroom capacity, which is what we call a space analysis. And then for the Winter Hill, we're doing a deep dive into the building conditions and a cost analysis. The reason for this is to kind of assess, once we get the enrollment study, and I'm sorry I didn't say that, the enrollment study is coming through in this spring. Once we have that, you do like an exercise, like could we fit what we have with the existing building, or do we have to build new? And also, you assess, what it would take to upgrade our buildings to come to current codes and meet current needs. So that's what's happening right now. The Winter Hill feasibility study is in process itself, and when we say feasibility study, it's like a structural building conditions analysis. There was a long discussion of when we should submit to MSBA. School committee will be asking, the superintendent will make a recommendation. The city, the administration, my understanding was that they do want to have all the data before they submit to MSBA, and the school committee feels like we should just get in queue now. We asked about the status of the 1895 building. This is kind of a dear project of mine, and that's why it's sort of there. I think to expand our departments, we need a building to move to. So if a bus hits me tomorrow, please don't forget about the 1895 building. Okay, and I shouldn't have said that. But we also talked a little bit, the East Somerville, there's been some noise complaints on the HVAC systems. They didn't measure it at night. They're going to go back and measure that at night. We talked about, we had an amazing presentation from DPW Preventive Maintenance Manager Rader of how he's keeping track of all our systems. I urge you to watch this. It was extremely fascinating. I was so happy to see that we're starting to document our buildings. It was kind of a shock. We got memos with timelines. I mean, I was just in awe of all of the information we're getting at. We had some discussions about IT in our schools, and to sort of summarize is we probably need to add 130 wireless access points to our schools. We have all the money for the infrastructure, but not the wireless access points. So needless to say, I might be asking for some money for the next budget season. We also, we've been asking for documentation of all the building maintenance issues, and they gave us a memo where they're starting to document all the issues, so we've got data there. And then we talked about the East Somerville School that's had a cracked facade for years. We're looking at repairs. Technically, we discussed in reality, the facade should be replaced with something else, but right now, due to resources, we're just gonna repair it, which is progress. And then we had other items, loose items on a memo for past issues that were done during COVID. That was submitted earlier, so we took that out of record. We talked a little bit about the school field house. And last but not least, we talked about this coming school, because as we were discussing about warming centers, that made me think that we have a building just sitting there. And we're told that the boiler has been replaced, but there's still a problem with the temperature control. And there's some uses there. The building does have a leak. It is not ADA accessible, but school committee member Patone said, it's really important to have this school building available to us because we now have no swing space. In the past decade, we've had 3 failures in our school buildings at different times or due to construction, and we've had used Edgerly. Now we don't have that. So with that, I ask that this report be approved as submitted.
On the committee report, Councilor Davis, then Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. The good chair made this point, but it bears repeating how incredibly and impressively prepared and thorough the presentations were from the folks at DPW. They were very excited. There was lots of talk of getting your popcorn and sitting back and watching these presentations. They literally built this asset maintenance tracking system, like didn't go out and get a third party. They built this software, and it was just impressively detailed. It links, dependent systems, dependent, assets, pieces of hardware that operate with each other. I won't be able to do it justice because it's just not the language that I speak, but color me duly impressed and incredibly grateful. We've been talking for so long about the lack of a coordinated, organized tracking and maintenance for the buildings and the assets. This is more specific to sort of the mechanics and all the stuff within the buildings, but just great job and is worth just shouting out again. It's really, really impressive.
It really felt like we walked into a new city, like at that meeting. Like I was like, oh, wow. So I'm really, I think part of it is the formation of this committee. I want to thank the administration. I know Liaison Carrillo, we meet in advance. We try to prepare, make sure what we ask. So I think it's been a good process of collaboration, and we're seeing improvement. So I hope we keep at it, and we can hopefully have news that we're going to get a new school building sometime soon.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Really quick, what was the update on the 1895 building? When will it be available?
So they don't have an update on that. I believe it's going to be somewhere in the capital improvement in there. They're aware of it. I think Director Rach and I share the same passion that that building does need to be improved. I think if anybody has been to the third floor, our staff can't even be here at the same time. My personal opinion is this is a small, tight city, and it's important that our staff are walking, feeling our streets all the time. Sometimes we have folks that live here. Sometimes this is not the cheapest city to live in, and folks can't live here. One of the planners, for example, lives in Beverly. So I think it's an important piece, but we have, what I've been told is, in my mind, we have 7 buildings that we have to, or clusters of buildings that we have to work on. But I'm told we can't do all of them. So I don't want to say too much, but I would put it as a higher priority than other projects, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, when the aforementioned capital investment plan, the CIP, does come out, I'm really hopeful that the 1895 building is right up there near the top of it. If people don't understand why it's so important that we prioritize this basically every month that it sits there in that state, it means it's going to be more expensive to go in there. It's just falling apart. It's going back to nature, and it's going to be much more expensive to go in there and renovate that. And it honestly increases the odds that at some point it just becomes not practical to renovate that, which would be an absolute disaster. So, and also I want to echo Councilor Davis's comments and what Councilor Gomez-Mocad said about this database that DPW have built. It's impressive. I went down to a presentation there, and they built this database, a Microsoft Access database, and have done so in a way that it's going to actually be user-friendly for folks to input data. And compared to where we were, to where we found out we were during the early days of the pandemic with the disaster with the Honeywell maintenance that was not done on our schools, this is a million miles from there, and this is a never again situation in terms of what happened with Honeywell.
As long as my coffee cup holder just stays out, I don't really care about the database, how it works. That's where I'm at with computers. All right, the committee report is laid on the table for approval. Thank you all.
And the next item is item 6H, a report of the Committee on Traffic and Parking, meeting on February 6th, 2023.
Back to back.
Maybe I'm having too many committee meetings. So very quickly, I want to note, the notes I was giving say Housing and Community Development Committee in them. I didn't catch that. So it is, I kept on picking up in the printer if you saw me get up, and it was the wrong meeting. First, this is an item I would recommend we, I believe we should vote on this today? No? It goes to okay. All right.
Sorry, Counselor. The committee report itself you should give it, and then we will accept it. The item, excuse me, there's an item that was submitted separately that was a result of an item, and we'll take that up separately,
Okay.
and then we can discuss what to do with that. No worries. Thank you.
Learning every day. So very quickly, the Green Cap Company meter rates are per ordinance, if I'm saying that correctly. They haven't submitted a rate increase in 12 years, and the rates don't match Cambridge, and we're right at the border. So there was a request to change this, which I would highly recommend. I can give anecdotal evidence that my mom, for whatever reason, I couldn't take her to the airport. She talked Green Cab, and she kept on texting me how great they were, and they were less expensive than Uber, and I should take them, and that they're, the app for using them is amazing, and the driver was great. So I'm giving my mother, Mama Mocha, sales pitch here. So we talked about the $100,000, which we will vote for the Route 16. I will ask you to read the notes because it's a long process. We will have to send out an RFP, and it'll be a process in and of itself. We had another one of my passions are the transfer of goods. We talked about loading zones, commercial parking. We talked about the traffic regulations and how we regulate where heavy commercial vehicles go. I urge you to look at the appendix. I believe this is P in the traffic regulations, and there's a very big mystery. About 5 of the trucks shouldn't go here roads are in Ward 5. Somebody had a lot of clout some time ago. And again, the reason I'm starting to bring this is how do we start organizing where our trucks go in our city as we're building bike lanes, et cetera. It's something we looked at, so it was just a topic of conversation. We talked about curbside changes, and again, talking about loading zones. We did talk, very importantly, we did talk about 311 and reporting on bikes, blocking of the bike lanes, and my biggest recommendation to everyone, you can put it on Twitter, that's fine, but please post it on 311. We want the data. I think we've had only a couple of hundred reports, and I think the reports can be higher. This will start giving us an idea of where the patterns are, where these trucks are, and maybe how we have to reorganize our roads. We had an extensive discussion on traffic calming, mostly on, in my ward. I do urge, one of the things I have realized of looking at the bike network plan is that areas that folks sometimes are asking for traffic calming, these are neighbor ways, which automatically we will want traffic calming because there have to be slower streets. And I encourage us as a council to start thinking of a master plan of how our roads work, not like somebody calls us and say, do this here. So it is it's actually, mobility is paying attention because a lot of the places everybody asked me for traffic calming are also the neighborways in my ward. So that was a very positive thing to see. We talked about Porter Street, where I've been pushing for traffic calming due to a resident who has a mobility impairment and can't go up that steep street and wants to be able to go across to see a friend. And then I gave a long-winded report on Cedar Street and improvements. Happy to share my study there. And then last but not least, again, a little more on Ward 5 and traffic calming on Highland Road. and I recommend that this report be approved as submitted.
Excellent. The committee report is laid before us. On that item, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you to my colleague from Ward 5 for handling that discussion, and in particular for talking about the request for 301 category for bike lanes that are obstructed. This is something the community is very passionate about and has spent, I would say, a decent amount of time and energy trying to document. And as with everything else, I'm sure there's many instances of this happening that we miss or that aren't captured in ways that we would like. But I would just submit this, that, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in the meeting, part of the reason that we may not be documenting this as much as we can is because there is a disconnect currently between 301 documentation of blockages in bike lanes and effective enforcement. It takes our departments, I don't know, let's say 5, 10, let's be extremely generous, 5 or 10 minutes to get down there. Oftentimes, vehicles can be gone in that amount of time, but they have still created an unsafe situation for the cyclists that have to pass them or swerve around them. Having this category, I think, is one step we can take to help ensure that the public feels the city is actually paying attention to this, actually tracking it, and then we'll be one step closer to actually having effective enforcement on it.
So I did request a
Thank you, Councilor Burnley. Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Sorry, through the chair, through the president. They sorted themselves. I think you just have to put a headline, bike blocked, and they'll sort it. They didn't want to put a separate category because sometimes it overlaps something else and might get missed. But one thing it helps, is if parking starts seeing that that area is at fault at a certain time of day, then they can send people there to monitor it. You're right, they're not going to come, it's too late when the person has swerved around and gotten into, the road. So that is the part that, I think we need data on this to really push it.
All right, on the committee report, we'll lay that on a table for approval, and Councilor Gomez-Moacad would like to take up item 8.2, which is a proposed amendment related to taxi cab meter rates. If we could read that item.
Yes, item 8.2 is an officer's communication from the city clerk submitting an amendment to section 13-6.1 of the Code of Ordinances to increase taxi cab meter rates.
So we heard from the chair that she's prepared to recommend approval of this tonight. I would say I'm happy to do that as well. If there are questions, we can also send this to Legislative Matters Committee. Do councilors have thoughts on this? Councilor Scott.
As the host of this delightful Ward 2 business that serves all of Somerville, I've reviewed it, I am supportive of it, and I would seek to approve it tonight.
Excellent, and I will add, for my part, my only question was, does this have any effect on the programs that Green and Yellow Cab has with our seniors, and it does not. So I am also happy to support it tonight. I think it's extremely odd that there is one industry that we set the rates for, but apparently that's how it works, so I'm ready to support it. Yeah.
Start with one.
Is there any further discussion on this? All right, let's call the roll, please.
Okay, so on approval of the amendment to section 13-6.1, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all counselors in favor, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all counselors in favor, that item is ordained.
Excellent. Thank you all. Next item.
And that will return us to the regular order of business and item 7.1, a request of the mayor requesting approval of the municipal election calendar for 2023.
This item and the next are referred to the Committee on Legislative Matters.
And that will bring us to item 7.3, a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Calla Taylor to the Urban Forestry Committee.
This item is referred to confirmation of appointments. Counselor Wilson.
Yeah, I'd like to move to waive the readings of items 7.4 to 7.17 and request those be sent to finance.
Counselor Wilson, as a tribute to the previous chair, Chair White, when he would want to waive the readings, he would make a point to just wait till the president started talking and then scream. And I would just ask that you do that instead of the hand waving, please, going forward. Thank you. Those items are referred to the Finance Committee.
The next item is item 8.3, an officer's communication from the city clerk requesting confirmation of the appointment of F. Kelly Landolfi to the position of Assistant Clerk of Committees.
Counselor Pineda-Newfeld.
Mr. President, can we move that to confirmation of appointments as well as the next item, 8.4?
Absolutely. And on behalf of the council, we're thrilled to have our two new clerks here and looking forward to these as soon as possible. Next item, please.
Item 9.1 is a new extended operating hours license from Chow and Joy at 626 Somerville Avenue for Sunday through Thursday until 1 a.m. and Friday to Saturday until 2 a.m.
Counselor Burnley.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to take up this item and the next and put them in committee. And I'd also just like to say for the public, I know that there are a lot of folks here who live in our city who are like, you know, Somerville, Boston, what sleepy cities? Why am I going to bed when it's only 10 o'clock on a school, and it's not a school night? I encourage more businesses that have the capacity to have extended hours to apply for it. There is a process in place. I've spoken with business owners previously who have felt that, at least in the past, the city put onerous requirements on them in order to have extended hours, such as having to pay for details. That was something I heard from a business owner in Union Square. That is not my understanding of the current process, and I would just encourage those that can and want to have extended hours to offer that service to our community and go through the process so that we can try to work with you. So I'd like items number 9.1 and 9.2 to go to committee, and I'd like to waive the readings of 9.3 and 9.4 and approve them.
Excellent. On 9.1 and 9.2, I'll just mention on that topic that the reason that Councilor Burnley is moving these to license and permit is because they require a public hearing. And so for members of the public, that's good information. As the good counselor just mentioned, there is a process in place for after hours, and there's also a process in place for public comment, for abutters that may have questions or concerns. So please, if you are a member of the public interested in this process, keep in mind that there are public hearings for these decisions. And the items 9.3 and 9.4, Councilor Burnley has moved to waive the readings. Next item.
Item 9.5 is a public communication from Chris Dewan submitting comments regarding the Union Square MBTA stop pedestrian crossing.
That item is placed on file.
Item 9.6 is a public communication from the Commission for Women submitting comments regarding item 23-0075, an ordinance establishing paid leave for survivors.
This item and the next we will place on file with a copy to Legislative Matters as they are relevant to items being deliberated there. Councilor Burnley.
Yes, if I could just speak on these really quickly.
Please.
Yes. 9.6, I just want to thank the Commission for Women for for collaborating with me on the ordinance to establish paid leave for survivors. I tried to reach out to them as early as I could in the process, and they were helpful in having good feedback on what provisions should remain, what should be moved out, and I hope to just offer that there are many more opportunities for us as counselors to collaborate with the other commissions on ordinances that pertain to the particular communities they represent, and I'm looking forward to more fruitful collaboration with them. As to the second item, this goes to the point that I was previously making in relation to obstruction of bike lanes. We are at the point where, we're collecting more data on these matters. We're trying to figure out where the hot spots are, partially because we are finding new technological ways to enforce without actually having to have a person there. This item from the Somerville Bicycle Advisory Committee just is in support of making sure that 311 requests are also enforced and that they can be put into the category of mail tickets when we start to initiate that program. There are many ways we could do that, including using the resourcefulness of our community members. I think that we would have to create a pretty stringent documentation process in order to make that viable. Other communities have done such things. But I think the point of this item from the community standpoint is we're here, we see these things happen, we know that they're wrong, illegal, dangerous, and we want to be part of the solution. So I think as lawmakers and as the government, it's our job to allow our people to help us whenever possible. So I hope that we can collaborate with the executive branch to create some way of allowing public feedback to inform our decision-making on this.
Thank you, Councillor.
That will bring us to the next item, which is 10.1, in order by Councillor McLaughlin that the Director of Health and Human Services update this council on efforts to provide warming centers for unhoused individuals during the recent cold spell.
Councillor McLaughlin.
I said my piece on this, Mr. President. I would like to refer to public health and safety.
The item is referred to Public Health and Public Safety.
Item 10.3 is an order by Councillor McLaughlin that the Director of Mobility place a large yield to pedestrians sign at the intersection of Broadway, Lombardy Way, and Mount Vernon Street.
Councillor McLaughlin.
I'd like this referred to traffic and parking.
The item is referred to Traffic and Parking.
Item 10.4 is an order by Councillor McLaughlin that the Director of Mobility prioritize the intersection of Broadway, Lombardy Way, and Mount Vernon Street for traffic calming measures.
Councillors Wilson and Scott would like to sign on. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, I'd like this referred to traffic and parking.
The item is referred to Traffic and Parking.
Item 10.5 is a resolution by Councillor McLaughlin that the administration update this council's Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters regarding efforts to hire more firefighters.
All right, I'd like to speak on this, Mr. President. Could you read the next item too, because they're related?
Item 10.6 is a resolution by Councillor McLaughlin that the administration inform this council regarding efforts to update the firefighter hiring process since the reserve list has been eliminated.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as we all know, the city has finally done away with the reserve firefighter list, which is something that I supported and several people around this horseshoe supported. I believe the reserve firefighter list discriminates against veterans, in particular, disabled veterans who are often at the top of civil service lists and may will have to wait their turn after people on the reserve list. Reserve list gone, that's a good thing. But I've been hearing these rumors, and they're unsubstantiated rumors, but we did get an email, the entire council got an email about this from a resident, from a concerned person on the civil service list, so I feel that's a matter of public record now, so it's worth addressing. This rumor that we might be accepting transfer applicants from other cities for the fire department, in lieu of just going through the civil service list, because apparently without the reserve list, we just can't figure out how to hire firefighters. So in an effort to get firefighters on board as quickly as possible, get people from other cities. So I normally wouldn't try to address a rumor publicly, but we got this email. I've heard it from people who kind of know what's going on, and I wanted to speak about it directly, because when we, for years, tried to get rid of the firefighter reserve list, I wanted to get rid of it, but I also never voted against somebody who was on the list, because I felt that was unfair to them. They're not the ones manipulating the system. They're just benefiting from the situation, and they didn't do anything wrong. So I didn't want to vote against them, but I'm going to have a really hard time if these people from other cities come before this council and need approval from us to become firefighters in the city of Somerville, knowing that it circumvents everybody who, like, people don't understand, like, what a time-consuming thing this is to take the firefighter, police, civil service exam every year, every other year, pay a few $100s for it, cross your fingers, hope everything goes right, and then hopefully be blessed with the opportunity to put your life on the line for people in this city. So I'm putting that out there now, because I'm just saying I don't want to hurt anybody who might come into the city, but I also know it's very important to the city these days for us to not reject an appointment when an offer was given. We've talked about this in charter reform, is, this is a bad practice. Well, this is the practice we have right now, and I'm going to have a really hard time supporting people from outside of the city coming in and taking a position from a Somerville resident who is most likely a veteran or a disabled veteran. So I just want to start this conversation and just kind of throw it down now, let it be known that, please don't go down this path. And I also am looking for clarification of what the problem is. Like, I don't understand the process, so I want to acknowledge that. Maybe there's a reason why it's very difficult to hire firefighters, but every city around us does it without a reserve firefighter list, so why can't we do that? I think we need to investigate that rather than look for these short-term fixes, potential, theoretical, rumored short-term fixes. So I'd like these to be referred to confirmation of appointments.
Councillor Burnley would like to sign on. The item is referred to confirmation of appointments. Councillor Scott on the item.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to support my colleague here, since I'm not on confirmation of appointments anymore, gratefully. There are currently well over 200, nearly 300 people on an eligible list for being a firefighter in the city of Somerville. That list was established in March of 2021. So 2 years ago, that list was established. So these are people who took the test in late 2020. It is shocking that we would go through a process. 73 of these people, by the way, are Somerville residents that are on this list, who took the test in 2020 believing in good faith that they would have an opportunity for employment to, as my colleague said, serve the citizens and protect the lives of the people of Somerville. It is important to note that under Mass General Law, Chapter 31, employees in civil service do have the right to request a transfer from one civil service community to another civil service community. The appointing authority is the one who has the discretion to allow the transfer, both the appointing authority from the departing community and the receiving community. What's unclear about that is, as a transfer, would it count as an appointment that would require confirmation here? I would certainly hope so, as they would be sworn in as officers in this community. But I appreciate bringing this matter forward, because these vacancies have existed since well into last year. And the council, I believe, passed a resolution requesting that the administration move forward with a civil service hiring process from this eligible list as soon as possible. And as to my knowledge, we still have not requested that list or started that process. I would love to be corrected if I am wrong in that. But I think it underscores the importance of retaining city council roles in confirmation processes and one of the important ways that this body can be a check that serves the people of the city, including the disabled veterans that he refers to. I would also point out that to my reading, the new charter that has been recommended does not retain the City Council's confirmation authority on these kind of appointments, so it might be food for thought for future meetings. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Strezzo?
Thanks, Mr. President. As I recall, coming up in the next couple of weeks, Acting Chief Breen will be on the confirmation of appointments agenda, correct? So maybe we can, if that ends up on the agenda as well, maybe that can be a further discussion to just find out what happened.
Seeing no further discussion, those items are referred to confirmation of appointments.
And that brings us to the end of this evening's agenda, Mr. President.
Okay. Are there any late items?
There is one late item before the council. An order from Councilor Burnley that this council recognize February as Black History Month.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you.
Would like to sign on?
Oh, yes, please. Yes. I want to make sure that I got this in. I apologize for getting it in late. I feel like, quite frankly, and I know a lot of other members of the Black community feel like Black history gets the short end of the stick, generally speaking, but also in terms of our month, we get a shorter month. We get, I feel like often forgotten about amidst what goes on in February. There's Valentine's Day. Over here, it's super cold. You guys got to deal with that. But, last month, especially for me, really made me reflect on a lot of the societal issues that have really plagued the Black community for so long. Thinking about Tyree Nichols, for example, and all the work that our country still needs to do to create a system of justice for all. Really, it just makes me want to double down on our efforts locally to do that, while celebrating all the wonderful achievements, contributions of the Black community to Somerville. In 1870, because I like history, I found, I wasn't there, but I found a census data from Somerville in 1870, where there was a man named Leonard Grimes, who I've spoken about a little bit before in this council, who was, I believe, the first pastor of the 12th Baptist Church in Boston. He was also a conductor of the Underground Railroad, and he helped in the use of the Fugitive Slave Act in Massachusetts. He helped shepherd people to Canada so that they could have freedom. And he was a part of our community. He spent his last years here with his wife and his kids. And these are the kind of stories that exist throughout our community for many different communities. And this is a time where we should be uplifting those stories, honoring them, internalizing them, and then taking the lessons from those who came before us to really take action for the betterment of our society. I have many more concrete, policy-oriented thoughts around that, but I'll say that for another day, and I'll just say, Happy Black History Month, everybody.
Happy Black History Month indeed. Thank you. Colleagues, before we adjourn, I neglected to say this in our moment of silence, but I think it's appropriate for the City Council to just also say a brief word about the unfathomable earthquake in Turkey and Syria. We have friends, neighbors, community members with deep connections to Turkey and Syria, and what they are experiencing is just beyond all belief. The death toll is currently above 20,000 people, with hundreds of thousands homeless. It is likely the worst natural disaster of the century. It's just it's hard to even find words to think about it. Our thoughts are with Turkey and Syria and everyone who's lost friends and family, and I would encourage all of you to do whatever you can to donate to the rescue efforts and support members of that community. And with that.
And also before adjournment, we will take all of those items off the table. So on approval of items 1.3, 2.1 to 2.2, 3.1, 3.3, 4.1 to 4.6, 6A, 6C, 6D, 6F, 6G, 6H, 9.3 to 9.4, 10.1 to 10.7, and one late item, and to place on file items 9.5 to 9.7. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Yes. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad. Yes. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen. Yes. With all councilors in favor, those items are approved and placed on file as indicated.
Excellent. Seeing no further business before the council, do we need a roll call to adjourn this evening?
Do you want a technical answer, or you want to just...
Well, it's 9, so we have a recess typically at this. No, yes, let's do the adjournment.
On adjournment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
With my apologies for this, yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes, please.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, this meeting is adjourned.
We are adjourned. Have a good night.